And then Bob dropped the bombshell. Clear out your room next month. When my mother gets discharged from the hospital, I'm bringing her straight to this house. Living together might make household chores easier, but I'll have to face my mother-in-law and endure her snide comments every single day. I was utterly devastated. Understanding that he seemed determined to make this happen with his mother, rather than argue with him, I knew it was better to discreetly take measures. Years of experience had taught me that. Bob left, not suspecting a thing, and seemed quite pleased. Everything's going according to my plan, I thought. It was so simple, it was laughable. A few hours later, after tidying up and taking a break, my phone rang loudly. It was a frantic call from Bob. "Hey, what the heck? The house is empty. I am Catherine Rose, a 45-year-old working mother holding a managerial position at a publishing company. I have a husband and 2 kids, a typical American family. When I got married, the idea of balancing work and family was just beginning to gain traction. It was an era when it was common for women to marry and become homemakers. Bob had allowed me to work, and in return, I've given my all to both my job and household chores. After having kids, I've been fully committed to raising them as well. But lately, I've been feeling overwhelmed. My mother-in-law, Mary, who was initially against me working, has started to complain. When are you going to stop this job nonsense? You're such a terrible wife. Back in our day, the job came second. Our main duty was to dedicate ourselves to our homes. I've been working hard in both my career and home, raising the kids and managing household chores. I'd always thought of it as repaying the kindness Bob showed by supporting my career. Perhaps seeing my dedication, both my daughter and son help around the house. My daughter does the laundry and ironing, while my son takes care of the bath and fills the tub every day. When I come home, I just have to prepare the meal and clean up. I'm so grateful to my kids. But even though we're both working, Bob doesn't lift a finger. I've asked him to help out several times, but Bob's answer is always the same. "Catherine, I let you keep working, didn't I? You're trying to skip out on your wife duties and make me do the chores because you want to have an easy life. Quit playing the victim." And every time my mother-in-law would tattle on me, and I'd get an earful from her. "Bob's the breadwinner of the family, you know, and you're trying to make him do house chores. What are you thinking, Mary? This is why it's never good for a woman to work. Be grateful I even let you work. Understand your place." Lately, perhaps she's bored, but almost every night she calls with these snide remarks. It's become so frequent and unbearable that both my kids and I are fed up. My kids have even started pretending they are needed somewhere else to hang up the phone. Sure, I'd appreciate the opportunity to keep working, but why the constant hostility? I've been the one handling both the household chores and raising the kids. She should understand how challenging it is to juggle both roles. What more does she want from me? Right now, I'm under so much stress, and the only saving grace is that my kids are on my side. The root cause of this situation lies in Bob's salary. Truth be told, Bob's pay isn't that great. It would be considered on the lower end. He had a tough time finding a job and eventually landed one at a small company thanks to a family connection. If he had shown some initiative, I wouldn't have cared about the low salary and would have supported him wholeheartedly. However, Bob got down on himself because of the way he got the job. In the beginning, he used to mutter things about how he should have been working at a bigger, more renowned company. He only ever did the work given to him, never striving for promotions or looking for new job opportunities. Someone truly capable would have studied on the side or honed their skills to find better job opportunities, but Bob didn't. So he only ever got raises based on seniority, and his performance-based bonuses were always the bare minimum. On the other hand, the company I work for is a nationwide corporation with parental leave policies in place early on. While it felt the effects of the economic bubble, it's a reputable company that has managed to avoid major salary cuts. Moreover, I've climbed up to the position of manager, successfully handling a significant number of contracts and projects. Naturally, I've earned considerably more than Bob. I'm even covering our kids' expenses, using my paycheck to set aside money for their college funds. I've taken full advantage of the benefits of working for a large corporation. Looking back, it feels like I was living off my savings when I took parental leave for my 2 children and had no salary. With Bob's salary, there's no way he could cover all the living expenses with 2 kids. I don't recall ever receiving living expenses from Bob, and there's no record of any transfers. Perhaps Bob let me continue working because he thought he could rely on my earnings. Lately, I've been thinking about this a lot, wondering if we've mostly been living on my salary. To confirm this suspicion, I looked at my bank book, and it became evident. The rent, utilities, groceries, and the kids' school fees. I've been paying for all of it. There's not a single penny coming in from Bob's account. I chuckled, feeling utterly drained. Bob's salary is completely spent on his hobbies and providing pocket money to my mother-in-law. I've always believed I owed Bob for allowing me to continue working, which is why I've been putting in so much effort with household chores and childcare. However, the current situation is quite different. I'm covering all the living expenses while Bob freely spends his salary without saving a dime. In terms of supporting our lives, it seems I've become the main breadwinner, while Bob does as he pleases. If I were to leave with the kids, what would happen? Or if I handed him this bank book and told him to leave, would Bob quietly go along with his claim of being the main breadwinner? It's a perplexing situation, and I can't comprehend his perspective. His catchphrase is, "I'm the one supporting y'all. If you've got a problem, just leave." Is he under the impression that he covers the living expenses while spending his salary freely? It's a total mystery. If I, the one paying for everything, were to leave with the kids, what would transpire? Would Bob just quietly go along, sticking to his claim of being the main breadwinner? He'd probably tattle to my mother-in-law. I wonder if she knows about the difference in our salaries. If she did, she likely wouldn't make those snide remarks. Perhaps she thinks Bob is a wonderful son, supporting his family and even allowing his wife to work. If she knew about the salary difference, what would she think? Would she ditch Bob and cozy up to me? No, that's the last thing I'd want. As I contemplate these thoughts, my mother-in-law has an accident at her home and hurts her foot. It appears she'll need hospitalization and physical therapy for a while. With my father-in-law having passed away before Bob and I got married, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Either Bob or I have to take care of her. In a call from the hospitalized mother-in-law, she starts with her demands and continues despite my attempt to explain my work situation. I decide to let Bob handle her, given the stress of being criticized by her for working. When I ask Bob to care for my mother-in-law, he complains immediately. "Hey, Catherine, why aren't you looking after Mom? I'm working too, you know." Despite being his mother, he shifts all caregiving responsibilities to his wife. Holding back my frustration, I reply, "I have work too, Bob, plus all the chores at home. If you'd help around the house, maybe I could visit her more. More importantly, I think your mom would be happier if it was you who came to care for her." While venting stress on a daughter-in-law is common, it's better to approach such situations with positivity. So I keep finding reasons to avoid caring for my mother-in-law. I diligently washed and folded my mother-in-law's laundry, carefully packing it into a bag. If she asked for specific items, I made sure to buy them, even checking the names of the products she requested. Even if Bob took credit for these things and I ended up shouldering the blame, I didn't mind. I just wanted to avoid hearing my mother-in-law's snide remarks. Thankfully, my judgment seemed right. My mother-in-law greeted Bob with a big smile every day. Apparently, for a mother like mine, nothing beats the joy of being cherished by her son. Having her beloved son around must feel much better than dealing with a daughter-in-law she'd want to make sarcastic comments about every day. It seemed like she eagerly awaited Bob's return from work, focusing on chatting with him. She handed Bob a shopping list note, and since the first time she was admitted to the hospital, she hadn't called me. Observing my mother-in-law's smiling interactions with Bob, it seemed he felt like he was being a good son. Even when he returned home at night, He handed me the laundry and shopping notes without any complaints. Although Bob would throw in some sarcastic remarks at me while handing over my mother-in-law's things, I was able to live peacefully. In the middle of the night, I muttered to myself that I just didn't want to hear any of my mother-in-law's complaints right now. I hoped for things to stay peaceful for a while. However, injuries took a toll on my mother-in-law's age, and despite my efforts through Bob for her rehab, she tended to skip it. Delighted with her son's visits, she would wait in her room for Bob's arrival, making various requests. While my mother-in-law rarely called on me directly, I was the one who actually fulfilled her requests, running errands, doing laundry, and even bringing her snacks. All she did was sit in her hospital room, chatting cheerfully with her son, while I handled the housework. It was a relief not to see my mother-in-law, but I was worn out from her numerous requests, and shopping alone became a significant chore. Understanding that living alone was inconvenient with her weakened legs, my mother-in-law made a shocking request to Bob. She expressed difficulty in shopping and preparing meals, asking him not to leave her alone. Of course, Bob sided with her, suggesting they live together. It seemed they were moving in that direction without consulting me. Finally, Bob dropped the bombshell. He would be living with his mother starting next month, instructing me to clear out my room. From the perspective of efficiency in household chores, it made sense for my mother-in-law to live with us. However, I was now faced with the prospect of seeing my mother-in-law every day and enduring her nagging. Despite my downcast feelings, Bob acted as if it was already decided that we would all live together. "I understand," I replied with little energy. Bob seemed determined to force this co-living situation, regardless of the despair I felt. It might be better to secretly make plans rather than argue about it. I knew this from years of experience. While Bob and my mother-in-law happily planned for the move, I constantly thought about how I could escape. I have my own room where I gather and review work materials. It's like a study or an office, essential for me. Bob wants me to give it up. Without this room, my work would be impacted, and I might have to come home even later than I do now. I muttered to myself while staring at the bookshelf, wondering where to move all these books and documents. I can't leave them at home if we live with my mother-in-law. They're too important to risk getting thrown away or damaged. It may sound like something out of a TV drama, but I really fear she might throw them out, especially since she'll probably target what she knows is important to me. And if I dare complain, she'll feign ignorance and run to Bob for support. There will be no peace for me in this house once we start living together. I can see her bossing me around and making snide remarks about my work, wearing me out. What should I do? If my mother-in-law is coming to this house, I had a sudden realization. Why hadn't I thought of this simple solution before? It seems living with my mother-in-law and all her nagging wore me down more than I realized. It felt like the fog before my eyes was gradually clearing up. Well, of course, there's absolutely no need for me to hold back. Why didn't I realize something so simple? I mumbled to myself and immediately began making preparations. As the month changed, the day of my mother-in-law's discharge from the hospital arrived. Bob was all excited, having taken the day off from the start of the morning. "Hey, you better take proper care of my mom from now on. Don't think I'm going to step in like I did when she was in the hospital," he said in a commanding tone. Without responding to Bob's order, I changed the subject. "Oh, speaking of which, your mom's been in the hospital for quite a while, right? Hospital food is bland, and they don't give you much. I bet a gourmet like her wasn't satisfied. I think the discharge process and packing will take up the morning. So why don't you take her out for some good food? You took the day off after all. How about a nice drive, just the two of you? I think she'd really appreciate it." I handed Bob a generous amount of cash. I had set aside some money for living expenses and even Bob's personal spending, but this was more than his monthly allowance. Surprised by the unexpected bonus, Bob's spirits lifted even higher. "Well, aren't you thoughtful? All right, I'll use this money and go for a drive with my mom. I'll give you a call when we decide about dinner. Make sure the house is in tip-top shape for my mom. All right. Without a hint of suspicion, Bob happily left. Everything was going just as I had planned. It was almost too simple. I couldn't help but laugh. This should buy me some time. I eagerly anticipated Bob and my mother-in-law's return as I continued tidying up the house. It was crucial to finish cleaning before they came back. A few hours later, just as I was taking a break after completing my tasks, my cell phone rang loudly. The call came in a flustered tone from Bob. "Hey, what's going on? The house is empty." That's right. After Bob went to pick up my mother-in-law, I moved all our stuff to the new house we just rented. Of course, I left some of Bob's personal belongings and a bed for my mother-in-law in the room. "Oh, you're back already. You told me to clear out the room, so I emptied both the room and the living room for Mom to feel comfortable. From now on, please enjoy your time with her," I responded nonchalantly, which only infuriated Bob. "You've got to be kidding me. The living room and kitchen are totally empty. After all I've done to support this family, how could you?" There it was, his go-to line. He seemed to believe that saying this put him in a superior position. How naive. "No, Bob. I've been the one supporting the family, including you. Weren't you spending your paycheck on pocket money for your mom and your own hobbies, and yet you demand an allowance from the family budget? How does that make you the breadwinner?" Bob seemed surprised by my resistance, but he retorted nonetheless. His argument, however, was nonsensical. "Shut it. I'm the man here. I'm the head of this household. You, as my wife, should just do as I say. Now put everything back the way it was." "No thanks. I bought all the furniture in the living room and all the kitchenware with my salary. The kids are with me, so don't worry. I also paid for the rent, utilities, and groceries of that house. So, in reality, I'm the breadwinner. Why did you decide to live with your mom without consulting me? I can't live with someone so selfish as you. Wish you can be the provider. Now live your life as you please." It seemed that Bob finally realized my intentions. "Hold on. Are you saying the rent for this place I've paid up until the end of this month, but from next month you'll need to handle it? I've also canceled all the automatic payments for electricity, gas, and the internet. So good luck with that." Bob's words probably tipped off the situation. My mother-in-law also started making a racket in a loud voice. "How could you do this, Catherine? Just because you have a job doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Fine, Bob and I will live here in luxury." "Oh, does my mother-in-law not know about Bob's earnings? I hope you can have that luxurious life. That is, if your son can afford it anyway. Goodbye." "Wait, Catherine. Where are you right now?" I didn't bother listening to the rest of Bob's rant. I hung up and blocked both Bob and my mother-in-law's numbers. The aftermath unfolded as expected. With his meager salary from an uninspiring job at a small company, Bob had little left after paying the rent and utilities for the needlessly spacious apartment that once housed a family of 4. Constant bickering between Bob and my mother-in-law became a regular occurrence. In their new, oversized living space, complaints about meals were met with retorts like, "Can't you provide something better for your mother? And shut up. If you want something else, make it yourself. You're just making excuses, saying walking is too hard after slacking off on your rehab. You don't do anything at home, Mom. You're just wasting time." Neglecting her rehabilitation, my mother-in-law's legs weakened, and she refused to engage in any home workouts. Frustration crept in as her unreasonable demands on Bob increased. There were even concerns about early signs of Alzheimer's. Adding my mother-in-law's pension, their financial situation felt like poverty. Moving to a smaller, more suitable place seemed logical, but it appeared Bob hadn't considered it. Since that incident, I had blocked all communication from both Bob and my mother-in-law. They didn't know our new address, and any attempts to contact me were futile. Their living situation was on the verge of collapse. With a decent income, thanks to my children's help, I managed to lease a nice apartment where each of my kids had their own room. A spacious room served as both a bedroom and workspace. Although the rent might be a bit high, Without Bob in the picture, I was saving more than enough. My children, tired of being belittled by their father, were now living freely. Their helpfulness around the house was evident, and chores felt good without the constant criticism. Praising and thanking them for their assistance became a normal occurrence, and I was glad my children hadn't become bitter. Heading back to the apartment where my kids awaited, I initiated divorce proceedings through a lawyer. I lived on my salary while Bob spent all his earnings on himself and my mother-in-law. A valid reason for divorce in my book. Bob tried to argue against it, but my lawyer shut him down every time. His claim of being the breadwinner without contributing was labeled as verbal and financial abuse. In exchange for not seeking alimony and child support, I got custody of the kids. We agreed on no property division since the savings for the kids' college were from my earnings. Grateful that the car and house were in my name and rented, I could now focus on my job without complaints. With the money saved for college and my future earnings, I planned to support my kids in whatever they'd wanted to pursue. Today, I was determined to work hard. No way, that's impossible. We're living together. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your poor life. I stood there in a daze, holding the phone after the call was abruptly cut off. The lawyer couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jessica looked at the lawyer with a puzzled expression. The lawyer was wiping tears with a handkerchief. The CEO is actually Linda. My name is Linda. I've been married to my husband Mike for 2 years. We don't have children. We both work and are so busy that we often work on weekends. We hardly have time for long conversations, leading to a life of passing each other by. Therefore, we try to match our schedules and go on overseas trips during our long breaks. It's only once a year, but we both look forward to it. When we got married, we decided to buy an upper-floor condo in a Bay Area tower. It was a stretch, but we did it considering the future value of the asset. Thanks to that, we're satisfied with our current life. I have a close friend from high school, Jessica. We sometimes go out for lunch together. Jessica, being beautiful, has high standards for men. She's not married yet but has a strong desire to do so. She's always looking for well-educated, high-income men on dating apps. Especially, she won't compromise on income. One day, I was enjoying lunch with Jessica at a cafe near a park. We were together in high school and university, even in the same classes. That's why we've consulted each other about various things. As a result, we know quite a bit about each other's dating histories and types. During our student days, we shared both fun and sad times. Those are good memories. Since I married Mike 2 years ago, we've both become busy, and the time we can meet has decreased. Now we meet only a few times a year, if that. Hey, can I come visit your condo next time? Jessica suddenly asked me. Jessica had never been to my place before. Then on the weekend, Jessica came over to my place. I could sense her amazement even through the intercom at the entrance. Jessica kept saying, "This is amazing." The moment I opened the front door, Jessica looked impressed. Wow, this place is like a mansion, and that elevator ride up was so long. I chose a spacious upper-floor condo because it was a once-in-a-lifetime purchase without compromising. It's even more spacious than a house. It's beautiful, really incredible. Jessica looked around the house, turning her head in every direction. Great location and an upper floor in a high-rise like this must have cost a pretty fortune. Jessica asked with a sly smile. Yeah, it's what you'd call $1 million condominium. It's got great security too. Look here. Jessica cut me off, reacting only to the term $1 million condominium. Right? It must be over $1 million. Your husband must be making a lot, she said, eyes wide with astonishment. That was so like Jessica. She's always had high standards for men, especially regarding their income. Mike's salary is quite high for his age, I guess, I said vaguely. I felt it was tacky to be too explicit. Huh. She had a look that seemed to have some ulterior motive. Jessica said, "Can I use your bathroom?" and left the living room. I told Jessica where the bathroom was and then started preparing tea in the kitchen. Concerned about Jessica, who was taking a while to return, I was about to head to the bathroom when Jessica came back, just replying to an email. Jessica doesn't usually make excuses like that. I felt a slight sense of unease while enjoying the cookies Jessica brought as a gift and having tea. She asked, "Can I stay till evening?" She apparently wanted to greet Mike. Indeed, it had been since our wedding that Jessica last saw Mike. It's not unnatural for her to want to see him. I decided to check with Mike just in case. Mike happily agreed. "I might finish work early," he replied in an email. I assured Jessica that it was okay, and then I began preparing dinner. Jessica was initially engrossed in her smartphone, but eventually stood up and headed to the bathroom again. Unaware of the prolonged absence while cooking, I noticed when Jessica returned, she was wearing a necklace that seemed oddly familiar. It was mine. Staring at the necklace, Jessica flashed an embarrassed smile. "How do I look? Does it suit me?" She posed like a model. Stunned, I observed as Jessica started laughing, saying, "Oh, come on. I'm just kidding. I just found it and thought it was cute. It must have been super expensive, right? A premium piece for sure." She rambled like a child trying to justify her actions, labeling it a gift for Mike. Wow, he must be really wealthy to afford something like this. Jessica sighed. However, the necklace was stored in the closet in the bedroom. Jessica must have pretended to go to the bathroom and instead went to the bedroom, peeking into the closet. That's what it seemed like. I couldn't believe her actions, but I didn't want to come off as petty, so I emphasized that it was a precious item. Taking advantage of my lack of reprimand, Jessica made an outrageous request. "Can I borrow this necklace for a while? I've got a date with a doctor I met on a dating app, and I want to wear it for that, please," she pleaded, joining her hands together as if praying. Reluctantly, I decided to lend it to her, emphasizing the need for careful handling, as it was a gift for Mike. As soon as Jessica knew she could borrow it, she smiled and began caressing the necklace. Of course, I understand she seemed to pay no mind to my words. When I finished the meal prep, I pretended to go to the bathroom to check the bedroom. Sure enough, the closet in the bedroom and the chest beside the bed weren't fully closed. Jessica must have opened every drawer and door she could find. There were fingerprints on the jewelry, watches, and precious metals. Jessica might have touched things, but probably didn't intend to borrow them. The shoes seemed to have been forced on, and the heels were misshapen. This was clearly going too far. Returning to the living room, I confronted Jessica. "You touched various things in the bedroom, didn't you? The shoes were misshaped, and there were fingerprints on the watch." Rather than appearing remorseful, Jessica puffed out her cheeks a bit. "Please don't do that again," she said. Jessica returned to her normal expression and apologized, saying sorry. Not wanting to dwell on this and risk straining our friendship, I decided to just lightly laugh it off. That's when Mike came home, holding a box of cake. Mike and Jessica saw each other for the first time since our wedding. It was awkward at first, but they gradually warmed up to each other, making for a lively dinner. By the time we ate the cake Mike brought, they were chatting like good friends. While I was clearing the dishes and washing up, they were laughing together. My boss is terrible, right? I envy Mike's subordinates. Mike was grinning, eyes crinkling with laughter. That's not true. I was a bit bothered by Jessica casually touching Mike. But at the time, I thought it was better than them being distant. After all, Mike wasn't the type of man Jessica usually goes out with. About a month after Jessica's visit, Mike's behavior started to change. He spent more time on his smartphone, which he usually didn't do much. He often seemed distracted when I talked to him and asked me to repeat myself. He always carried the phone with him, even taking it to the bathroom. It was an obvious change, and it seemed I had become a cheated-on wife. Contemplating checking Mike's phone, I hesitated to even touch it. Conversations between Mike and me at home became increasingly rare, and he started working on weekends much more. Mike was hardly ever at home on weekends, and while we barely saw each other on weekdays originally, now not seeing each other on weekends too felt like living separately within the same house. Moreover, We started sleeping in separate bedrooms under the pretext of his tiredness. Vaguely considering divorce or separation, I stumbled upon divorce papers on the living room table one day. Upon closer inspection, Mike had already signed them. Though I had suspected it, actually seeing it still shook me. With trembling hands, I called Mike, questioning him about the unexpected discovery. "I just got home and saw it on the table. What does this mean exactly?" I inquired, hoping for clarification. Mike's response struck me hard. "It's what it looks like." "I want a divorce," he declared, leaving me stunned. Pressing him for a proper reason, Mike dropped the bombshell. "I've fallen in love with someone else. It's not an affair. I'm serious." With disbelief, I heard a familiar female voice on the phone, Jessica. It was what I had suspected. "I'm dating Mike, and I even want to marry him," Jessica admitted nonchalantly. Hearing the confirmation made my heart race and brought on a cold sweat. Jessica's crude way of talking hinted at a side of her I hadn't seen before. Mike echoed, "There's nothing left to talk about. Can you just sign the divorce papers and send them off? I want to talk things over, so please tell Mike to come home." Stunned by the abrupt ending of the phone call, I couldn't move for a while. Sleepless nights persisted as Mike didn't come home, and I couldn't bring myself to touch the divorce papers. Jessica continued to torment me by sending multiple photos of her and Mike together, flaunting their relationship. My mental health deteriorated, and my complexion worsened. People around me became worried, urging me to seek medical help. Reluctantly, I ended up in treatment, managing to regain some peace with medication. An unbelievable incident unfolded upon my return from the hospital. Something felt off inside the room, and upon checking the bedroom, I discovered that bags and jewelry were missing. The count of jewelry watches in the chest was off too. There was only one person who could do this. Jessica. Questions swirled in my mind. Why would she do something like this? What had I ever done to her? My insomnia relapsed, and sleepless nights continued, leaving me staggering through my days. During counseling at the hospital, when I mentioned the theft at home, I was strongly advised to consult a lawyer. I promptly contacted the company's lawyer and set up an appointment, stating my clear intention. "I'll get a divorce. I want those two to face proper consequences." I responded immediately, surprising even myself. Just a little while ago, I was pondering what to do, and I couldn't believe how easily those words came out of my mouth. Perhaps I really wanted to punish them after being tormented so one-sidedly. It was just about getting back at them. Now, a week later, I received a message from Jessica. I had sent her a certified letter. "Hey, what are you thinking, sending a certified letter to my workplace?" Jessica sounded pretty angry, her voice filled with rage. "You must have expected at least this much. Anyway, I'm leaving everything to my lawyer now." I hung up the phone. Jessica called several times after that, but I ignored all of them. Then Mike called. I had sent a certified letter to his parents' house. Apparently, his affair being exposed at home caused a huge uproar. I wanted to burst out laughing at his self-inflicted predicament, but managed to restrain myself. Feeling that leaving it all to the lawyer wouldn't be enough to calm my feelings, I decided to confront them both. I would denounce them thoroughly on the spot. The lawyer arranged the date and time, and we decided to have the discussion at the law office. A few days later, the two reluctantly showed up at the law office. I thought they would bring their own lawyer, but it seemed they came alone. Jessica stormed into the office, flinging the door open. Mike followed, looking uncomfortable. "Finally, we meet, you coward." Jessica made no effort to hide her anger, but Mike stepped forward, trying to calm her down. "Well, you've been running away all this time. Our wedding's been delayed because of you." Jessica looked like she might throw her bag at me any moment, and Mike was desperately trying to hold her back as I watched them with a pitiful feeling. The lawyer nodded at me. "Please calm down. If any violence or abusive language occurs, we will immediately call the police." "Understood." The mention of the police made Jessica stiffen. With the lawyer's intervention, Jessica and Mike took their seats, becoming calmer. We sat across from each other at the office table, ready to start the discussion. Mike, you're seeking a divorce, correct? Jessica was sitting hotly, while Mike slumped, looking small. We'd agreed to the divorce. However, since your relationship is adultery, we will ask for alimony. Is there any significance to this? Mike's face clouded over. I'll agree to the divorce, but once the alimony is paid, don't contact us ever. I quietly nodded in agreement, and Jessica looked displeased, maybe expecting more resistance from me. When the lawyer began discussing the alimony amount, Jessica snapped. I said any amount is fine. We have plenty of money. Jessica sat arrogantly with her arms crossed. The lawyer looked at her with interest, saying, "Oh yes, didn't he research? Mike is the president of a jewelry company with a yearly revenue of $2 billion. Mike looked up frantically, trying to restrain Jessica's arm. Jessica, her face flushed, continued excitedly. Alimony for an affair is nothing to us. I'll even give a proper share of the property. Mike was trying hard to calm her down. Jessica shook off his hand and continued, You can barely make ends meet on your salary, right? She scoffed with a laugh. The lawyer burst into uncontrollable laughter. Jessica looked at him with a puzzled expression, and the lawyer wiped tears with a handkerchief. Actually, the president is Linda. Jessica was dumbstruck, her mouth hanging open. Mike hung his head, his body trembling slightly. Mike is just an ordinary employee with no position at Linda's company. I am Linda's corporate lawyer. Jessica started laughing loudly. What are you talking about? Are you really a lawyer? Can lawyers lie? The lawyer calmly replied, Why not ask Mike next to you if what I said is a lie? Mike, meanwhile, just bit his lip, looking down. Growing more anxious, Jessica grabbed Mike's arms and began shaking him. You said you were the president of a $2 billion jewelry company. That's not a lie, right? Mike remained silent, covering his face with his hands, uttering inaudible moans. Growing more desperate, Jessica gripped his arms tighter, repeatedly asking, Answer me. It's not a lie, right? Finally, Mike whispered in a raspy voice. I'm sorry. Mike's single apology plunged the room into a deep silence. Jessica's strength seemed to leave her body, and she let her hands that were gripping Mike fall limply. You said you were the president of a company making $2 billion a year, she muttered, almost to herself. Mike's solitary apology had plunged Jessica into despair. She stood up, trembling. It's a lie, right? There's no way you're the president. Jessica pointed at me accusingly. Why didn't I know about this after all we've shared? I spoke to Jessica calmly, as if guiding her. Just because we're close friends doesn't mean I tell you everything, especially since you were so fixated on money. I had no intention of telling you, I said, looking Jessica straight in the eyes without averting my gaze. Jessica seemed to lose all her energy and slumped down. Then that house, of course. The house is in my name, so Mike will be the one leaving. Jessica fell silent, and Mike continued to hold his head. Mike probably didn't want to come here. He knew this would happen. But if he didn't come here, things would be worse. It's hell either way for him now. Mike is left with nothing but hell waiting for him. The lawyer began to present the evidence I had gathered. First, the photos of Mike and Jessica together, the photos sent to my phone, now printed. The lawyer placed an IC recorder on the table and played the recorded conversation. Why would you send something like this? I just wanted to share our happiness with you. Jessica's voice filled the room, while Mike seemed to be holding back tears. Hey, still clinging to the past. I want to divorce quickly. I know what you're clinging to. It's Mike's income. He's the president of a $2 billion jewelry company, right? You hid it because you thought I might take it? Jessica, perhaps embarrassed, covered her face with her hands. Hurry up a divorce and leave that condo. It'll be mine soon. Too bad Mike didn't come back to you. I'll give you as much alimony as you want. Poor thing, your aim was the money, not Mike. I'm speechless at how you've been deceived. Mike and Jessica fell silent. Do you think this is over? What else is there, Jessica? You broke into the house when Linda wasn't there and stole several items, didn't you? I felt relieved at the lawyer's calm demeanor. Mike looked shocked, apparently unaware of this. Hey, what's this about stealing? Jessica bit her lower lip, her hands shaking. No, not me. I don't know anything. The lawyer placed a tablet on the table and played a video. It showed Jessica sneaking into the bedroom, taking bags and jewelry, and stuffing them into her bag. Jessica stared wide-eyed at the footage. What is this? Why are you recording me? Isn't this illegal surveillance? Mike covered his face with his hands. We always had security cameras inside our house. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? Who would think you'd break in to steal? I felt a headache coming on from their foolish exchange, and you used my key without permission. I wanted those things. It's your fault for not buying them for me. The two began arguing, ignoring us. The lawyer and I could only look on in disbelief. Please save your arguments for later. Regarding this theft, we will be filing a police report, the lawyer said calmly. Jessica seemed to panic at the mention of the police. That's a bit much, isn't it? I just borrowed something from a friend. I never gave you permission to borrow anything. I spoke to her calmly. Besides, you're not a friend or anything. You were just a classmate. That's why I'm filing a police report. Jessica started to kneel and apologize. I looked down at her and said coldly, You're going to compensate. The value of what you stole is more than your annual income. Are you sure about that? Jessica was speechless. And there's also the matter of the alimony. Jessica turned to Mike, pleading in a tearful voice, You'll pay, right? Even if you're not the president, you still earn well, right? Mike was silent, looking down. He can't pay it because he's about to be fired, I said. Mike looked up in surprise. That's correct. Since leaving the house, Mike has not shown up for work. Plus, with this commotion, there have been complaints from his boss, I explained. Mike looked like he might collapse on the floor. But there's still the property division, right? I'll pay with that, Jessica said desperately. That's not possible. Linda and Mike have a prenuptial agreement regarding property. You didn't hear anything from Mike, did you? He never told you the inconvenient truths, I replied calmly. I regarded Mike with disdain as the lawyer placed the contract on the table. The agreement explicitly stated that if the marriage lasted less than 3 years, neither party could claim the other's property. Given that they were currently in the 2nd year of marriage, Jessica attempted to grab the document as if to tear it up. You should handle that document carefully. It's a notarized deed, and you could be held legally accountable for damaging it, I warned. At the mention of potential legal consequences, Jessica halted her attempt to destroy the document and began to half-heartedly plead with Mike. Mike, you have savings, right? Use that to pay, she suggested. Mike, looking at Jessica with resentful eyes, retorted, What money? You always wanted sushi, steak. There's no way I have any savings left. It appears that way, and it seems he has debts from unsavory sources, I added. Jessica's shoulders slumped, revealing the pitiable sight of the once glamorous appearance that used to turn heads. This was the result of the seeds she had sowed herself, leaving the two looking haggard and lost, muttering about how this wasn't supposed to happen and what they would do now. Deciding to leave the rest to the lawyer, I stood up to leave, emphasizing to Jessica, Money isn't something you steal from others. It's something you earn through effort. After that, the divorce proceeded smoothly. I sent all of Mike's belongings back to his parents, who kept apologizing to me and even sent a letter of apology. Jessica, on the other hand, faced police interrogation for illegal entry and theft, leading to her arrest after admitting guilt. Although she showed remorse and an intent to compensate, her other crimes, including stealing from men she met on a dating app, suggested she might face a prison sentence. Mike, unable to live in Jessica's apartment, moved to an old apartment on the outskirts of town. Despite looking for a job, his unexplained absences and poor attitude at his last job made it challenging to get hired. He resorted to day labor to get by, receiving regular updates on their situations from the lawyer. I threw myself into work after the divorce. Currently, I am expanding our company's jewelry line to Europe, an idea that emerged during a break I took after the divorce. During that time, I had the chance to connect with the owner of a jewelry store in France. We bonded over shared experiences of divorce, and he agreed to showcase my company's jewelry in his store. Focusing on sales in France, I considered it a well-deserved perk after all I had been through. Before long, we'll be selling this house and moving into a high-rise condo. So you better start looking for a new place. Maggie's mother, Karen, sneered, "You're not thinking you'll get a dime of our father's inheritance, are you? We're having you relinquish your right to it. You got that, Ashley?" My sister threatened me, her face a horrifying mask of cruelty. Ashley's boyfriend stood to the side, his laughter only adding salt to the wound. It was unbearable. Our father's funeral had barely finished, and they dared to talk like this. "You heard the absolute worst. I can't stand this anymore. I'm cutting ties with you all." The moment I shouted those words, the doorbell rang. Standing there was a man I felt like I'd met before. "My name is Maggie. At 22, I'm soon to graduate from university. Nothing to brag, but I'm strong-willed and patient. From my childhood through university, I've always quietly and diligently focused on my studies. I've maintained reasonably high grades, and I do have dreams I want to fulfill. Although I'm content with my daily life, I'd also have a significant worry. Maggie, come downstairs now." A loud voice rang from below. With reluctance, I went downstairs to find my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley. "Mom, sis, what's up?" I was studying, as usual. "You nerd. You're still studying even though university is almost over. What a hard worker." The one laughing was my sister, Ashley. A beauty like our mother, she's flamboyant and was even a popular model back in the day. Now she's unemployed, under the gaze of helping around the house. "We're going shopping. You should clean the dishes and do the laundry. Don't forget to iron properly, okay? Also, we're out of detergent and other things, so you should go shopping." Mother calmly ordered me to do the housework, knowing she would get furiously angry if I talked back. I quietly responded, "Okay." I left the house stressed out to the nines and high in spirits. "I need to get on with that," I muttered quietly as I started to clean up the mess they had left behind. Mom, a former beauty queen, has extravagant tastes and loves luxury. She's always favored my beautiful sister while ignoring me since I'm not all that pretty. Moreover, they've always dumped housework and other chores on me as if I'm their maid. My sister took advantage of this, and I've been oppressed by them since I was little. Yet I've tolerated it because, after all, we are family. And then my phone rang. When I looked at my phone screen, it read Dad. "Hello, Dad, it's been a while." I could tell my voice had brightened. "Oh, Maggie, it's been a while. Are you doing okay?" "I'm doing great. How about you, Dad? It's night there, right? How's work?" "I'd like to say I'm fine, but I've been having headaches lately. I'm planning to go see a doctor soon." "How's your schoolwork? Is it going well, Dad? Take care of yourself, okay? Thanks to you, everything is going well. I'm studying hard to achieve my dream." "That's my girl. You're always so diligent. Remember what I always say, be righteous and kind, right? Don't worry, I'm doing my best. That's my Maggie. I'll bring lots of souvenirs when I come home next time." After that conversation, I hung up the phone. To put it bluntly, my family is well off. This was largely due to my elite father, Harry, who has been flying around the world for work since his younger days. Although he was often away from home, he was kind to me and showered me with love whenever we had the chance to meet. I adored him dearly. However, to my mother, Karen, and my sister, Ashley, he was nothing more than an ATM. The harsh truth was that they were living lavishly on the money he earned. "Be righteous and kind, Maggie," he would say. His presence was always nurturing and supportive. He was my rock. That's why I was able to stay strong until now. Several months later, shortly after I graduated from university, a chilling event occurred. "Maggie, Dad has..." Karen burst into my room, her face as pale as a ghost. Apparently, my father had collapsed at the airport as soon as he returned home and was rushed to the hospital. Upon hearing the news, Ashley, Karen, and I immediately headed to the hospital. There, my once strong father lay frail and helpless. "We suspect he's had a stroke," the doctor informed us. Despite extensive treatment, my father barely improved. To be specific, he was left with severe physical paralysis and a speech impairment, unable to stand or converse properly. To care for my now dependent father, I decided to put my dreams on hold and dedicate myself to his care at home. Predictably, Karen and Ashley completely ignored him, treating him as if he was useless. They didn't even help with his care, let alone come by to see him. "Mom, Ashley, if you helped with Dad's care once in a while, I'm sure he'd be really happy," I pleaded. However, their response was always the same. "We're too busy. We've left Dad's care to you." "Dad, it was a lovely day today," I would tell him. "Thank you," he would struggle to reply. I studied and learned about caregiving. I made sure he could see outside by keeping the curtains open, fed him specially prepared meals, and arranged fresh flowers every day. Though I had help from professional caregivers, I did everything I could for him with all my heart, remembering my father who had worked so hard for us and showered us with love. I was desperate to do everything. Whenever times got tough, I would recall my father's words, "Maggie, always be righteous and kind," and each time it gave me the strength to carry on. One day, I overheard Karen and Ashley whispering in the house. "Thanks to Dad's insurance money, I was able to buy that bag I wanted," Karen said. "I know, right? Thanks, Dad. Maybe I should get a new wallet too," Ashley chimed in. I held back from yelling at them and continued to listen, only to hear Karen utter something even more shocking. "If Dad were gone, we'd receive a few $100 million from his life insurance and inheritance he's been saving up through his job and investments." "Wow, Mom. And we should totally buy a luxury condo, and my boyfriend could live with us." "Oh, I wish Dad would hurry up and die." Indeed, I couldn't bear it any longer and left the scene. My father was struggling to stay alive, and yet they were spending his insurance money and dreaming about a luxury condo from his inheritance, wishing for him to die sooner. I felt like vomiting out of anger and despair. In reality, my mother and Ashley had been living it up recently, buying up brand name items and even leaving my father and me behind to go on overseas trips. But there was no way I could tell my father, who was already having such a hard time. I didn't want to sadden him. Pretending I hadn't heard my mother and Ashley's conversation, I devoted myself to taking care of my father. Many friends and acquaintances often came to visit him. They all loved him. I particularly remember an older man in a suit and glasses who often came. I wasn't present, but he was probably an executor from my father's company or something. He would bow his head and greet me whenever he saw me. I was happy that my father was loved, and on the days when he had visitors, his face seemed brighter. I thought these days would continue, but a few months later, my father had a stroke recurrence and suddenly passed away. I cried, clinging to my father's body that no longer spoke. Even my mother and Ashley shed tears this time, mourning the loss of my father. What followed was a whirlwind. There was a wake and a funeral to be held, and of course my mother, the chief mourner, did nothing. Neither did Ashley. In the end, I had to go through all the procedures by myself, running around in a rush. The wake ended, and many people attended the funeral, with numerous flowers arriving as well. Seeing the character and popularity my father had in life, I felt somewhat comforted. At the funeral, sobbing voices echoed, and my father, with a peaceful face, embarked on his journey. In the evening of the day when the first 7 days were over, I had finally started to recover a bit from the sadness. As I was cleaning up the 7th day, my mother and Ashley called me into the living room. Next to Ashley was a man who was said to be her fiancé. Like Ashley, he looked good, but given his former job as a male stripper, his inner frivolity was clear. Apparently, his name was John. "So about father's inheritance," my mom began. I had a terribly bad feeling, and then my mother, laughing scornfully, said something outrageous. "We'll get a lot from your father's inheritance, so we decided to sell this house and live in a luxury condo. So you should leave." "Mom, it's only been a week since Dad passed away. Are you already talking about the inheritance and the luxury condo? We've already signed the contract. It's a high-rise, brand new. You've already signed. When did you? About a month ago, I guess. A month ago. But Dad was still doing fine. He was practically dying. He had a lot of money, so it'll work out fine. My mother was selfish as ever. Ashley continued, yes, that's right. The luxury condos for Mom, me, and my fiancé. So, you're a nuisance. You should hurry up and find some shabby apartment, okay? Even you, sis? Are you serious? Of course. Don't even think about getting any of Dad's inheritance. We'll have you renounce it. You understand, right? Ashley was approaching me with a terrifying expression, and next to her, her fiancé was laughing. Seeing my father's inheritance in the corner of my eye made me feel suffocated. It was too much. They had the nerve to say such things before my dad's mourning was even over. You guys are the worst. I can't stand it anymore. I'm cutting ties with both of you. We'd actually feel relieved if you cut ties with us. My mother and Ashley laughed at me. I clenched my fists and started trembling. At that moment, the front doorbell rang. Straightening my trembling breath and wiping my tears, I'd opened the door, thinking it might be a late visitor. Good evening, my condolences for your loss. The man who deeply bowed his head at the entrance was the middle-aged man in a suit and glasses who frequently visited my father's sickbed. Thank you. Please come in. As I was about to invite him in, the man presented his business card. Please check this. My name is Watson, an attorney assigned by your father. The business card indeed belonged to a law firm, and although I had not noticed it before, a badge denoting him as a lawyer was gleaming on his chest. A lawyer? I was surprised. My mother, Ashley, and her boyfriend came out from behind. What does a lawyer want from us? Watson responded to my mother's skeptical expression. I've come to discuss your husband's inheritance. Can we talk for a moment? Watson sat down in the living room. My mother sat directly across from him, and Ashley and her boyfriend sat next to her. I ended up sitting on the side facing them alone. Watson took out several documents from his bag, looked at us, and then began to speak slowly. First, may I read your husband's will? That man could barely move or speak, and yet he left a will. Get on with it, please. My mother spoke in an irritated tone. Then allow me to read it, Watson said in a quiet voice. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths as follows. The testator leaves all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. A moment of silence fell upon the room. The testator designates the following as the executor of the will. Before Watson could continue reading, Ashley interrupted. Wait a minute. What did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The testator designates the part before that. Let me read it again. The testator, Harry, hereby bequeaths all property belonging to him to his second daughter, Maddie. What does that mean? Karen, our mother, and Ashley exclaimed in unison. I was so shocked that I couldn't breathe, and all I could do was stare in astonishment. Watson continued, Next, I will read the postscript of the will, looking at me. In other words, this is your father's final message. I quietly listened as he read. Maggie, you gave up your precious dreams to take care of me. I wasn't able to pay much attention to you because I was always working, but I truly appreciate it. Thanks to you, I was able to pass away peacefully and fulfilled. Upon hearing my father's last words from Watson, tears started to well up in my eyes. Maggie, always be kind and correct. I know you can do it. Your father will always be watching over you. Please be happy. All I could do was sob in front of them while Karen and Ashley were making a big fuss. What does that mean? So the inheritance all goes to her? Yes. What happens to our money? In response to their outburst, Watson cast a brief glance at them. You two are not mentioned, by the way. Maggie is also the sole beneficiary of the life insurance. What are you talking about? Do you think that's allowed? Karen turned beet red, ready to burst at any moment. That's right. Isn't there something called a reverse portion that's supposed to be guaranteed to the wife and the children, right? Ashley leaned forward eagerly. You're referring to the statutory reserve. Indeed, you two have the right to claim a statutory reserve from the inheritance Maggie will receive, Watson said in a matter-of-fact tone. Of course, Karen seemed to be getting back to her usual self. Even if there is a will, if its contents are unfair, you can claim a share of the inheritance prescribed by the civil law. However, Watson continued, Harry had commissioned us to investigate the fact that you, Karen, and you, Ashley, were living luxuriously with Harry's money and squandering the insurance money. The eyes of Karen and Ashley widened in astonishment. Indeed, you purchased a luxury condominium and a car, and you spend quite lavishly on host clubs and overseas trips. All the caregiving and household chores were left to Maggie alone. Moreover, there were even remarks hoping for Harry's death. My father knew everything. He knew everything but pretended not to know. That's my mother. Stammered Watson responded calmly. In this case, it's unlikely that the distribution of the inheritance will be deemed unfair. Even if you take it to court, it's very unlikely you'll be able to claim anything. Of course, you can try if you wish. I'll be the one you'll be set up against. My mother's face had turned a pale blue. That's ridiculous, my sister also muttered. When Watson was leaving and I walked him out to the entrance, he said, Maggie, you have grown up to be quite admirable. Your father always spoke of you with such joy. Really, my father has known your father since we were young, and I was honored to take on this request. Your father felt he was too lenient with the other two, but I believe he found peace knowing how well you turned out. Watson's eyes were squinted in a warm smile. I was so touched that I teared up again. Please live a happy life from now on. You know I'm always here to help. Watson left me with those words, and I kept bowing deeply to him. A year later, with Watson's help, I was able to inherit all of my father's assets. As for my mother and sister, my mother, unable to pay off the loans for the high-rise condominium, had already contracted the expensive car and the designer goods, eventually went bankrupt. My sister, on the other hand, was quickly abandoned by her boyfriend when he learned that she wouldn't be inheriting anything. I heard through the grapevine that she's now living with my mother and working part-time. They called me for a while, but I kept replying, I've cut ties with you. Please contact me through a lawyer. I thought that was what my father wanted too. Now they don't contact me at all. As for me, I used my father's inheritance to attend a law school I had once given up on. Originally, I wanted to become a prosecutor to uphold my father's words, always be kind and correct. But now my dream has changed. After working with Watson, who had saved me in my time of need and provided unwavering support, I started to admire being a lawyer myself. So now, I'm studying hard to become one. I strongly wish to become a lawyer like Watson, who is always just and kind.